So we're back with TSG, my South African team, and the fifth part of my Pentagon Challenge. We're here to win the African Champions League. And we're just coming towards the end of the first transfer window of this save, or this part of the save, having had a good bunch of wins. And what we're starting to see now is bids for our players, in particular bids for the players that we are particularly keen to get rid of. We have an example of one of those bids on the screen. We've got a bid for one of our forwards. Evgeny Krot is a Belarusian forward who hasn't really got the characteristics we look for, hasn't got acceleration, hasn't really got pace. He's got decent composure off the ball finishings. That's pretty good, but isn't really quick enough to be a forward in our system, which does value quickness. And so Evgeny, we've been looking to move on. He's got a 3,000 a week wage, and this is our squad TS Galaxy. I'm calling it TSG. And he's one of the most expensive players we've got. And another guy called Uche, who is the most expensive player we've got, 3,800 per week, has also got a bid, so we can now progress that bid as well, 170,000 from Supersport United, which is another team in our division. I use a scoring system to consider players, and in that system, Krot and Uche are players that score in the 11. So this is a blend of the players' attributes based on a system that is outlined in my various videos here on YouTube. And we think of Uche and Krot as being sort of in the 11s. They're not really that well fitted to the tactic. Krot is a target man, really, and Uche is a winger, so he hasn't got jumping reach, and importantly, he hasn't got composure, so his finishing isn't as good as it could be. Even though he's got a pretty good overall rating, he's got leading Premier Division according to the ratings. There's lots of interest in him, and his recent form has been good in the small number of games that we have played. He's been pretty good. I've no doubt that this player is good, but he just isn't the right fit for what we're trying to do. And that's what the scoring system tells us. So it will go on to tell us that other players will be better for us. And that's what we're going to do in this video. So what I'm going to do today is go through and I'm going to recruit players to replace Uche and Krot. I'm also going to look generally across all positions just to see if there are any absolute standouts that we should try to bring in during the couple of weeks between now and the end of the transfer window. So it's the 23rd of January. We've got until the 1st of February, so we've not got long, but we should be able to recruit for this position first and foremost, and then any obvious standouts, and we'll send our scouts out to go and have a little look, and we'll make a couple of decisions. So the way I'm going to deal with that, since the last one of these videos, I realised it was a bit unwieldy with the player purchasing. So what I've done, I've simply created a single shortlist with all the players that we know, and there are 10,000 or so of them. I could use this scouting range thing and turn that on, but I think we've got a good handle on pretty much all the South African players, and then a bunch of other players around the world that I found out about as manager of Arsenal previously. So I had this scouting range up to maximum. So what I'm going to do is go in and apply a filter for a striker in particular. So I've looked at what I think is sensible in the division. And I've looked at that for a centre-back first and foremost. I did that in the previous video that I posted here, where I basically looked at the top wage earners in South Africa, looked at their attributes and sort of broadly came up with a filter. I've now got filters for centre-back, full-back, defence midfielder and striker along the same lines. And I'll just put on the screen here the levels that I'm looking for each of these and the key attributes that I'm looking for. So we're looking at a striker here. I put these archetypes together first and foremost when I was at my previous part of the Pentagon Challenge at Arsenal. So the first part here is a sort of Champions League player, and then I've got these double slashes, which basically mean not Champions League player. Now we're on to the South African Premier Division. So for acceleration and pace in South African Premier Division, ideally the archetypal player will have a 14 pace, 14 acceleration, maybe 13 if it's a backup. And then off the ball, composure, finishing, dribbling, first touch technique would be 12. And so if you go back into this, that's exactly what this is saying. 12 for all of those, 13 for a backup, ideally 14. And then we've got down here plays as a striker and wouldn't fail to get a work permit in South Africa. We've got a work permit regime for the 5 overseas players we're allowed to have registered in the squad. So if you do that and you say players that are slightly interested in signing for us or slightly interested in being loaned to us, and tell me in the comments, by the way, if you understand how these things work. I always just put them to slightly interested. If it should be something else, shout and tell me, because I've always done it like this. This I know works pretty well, but maybe there's a better way. But I can now just take these guys, and in fact, because that's not many, what I'll do is I'll relax it by 1 for all except acceleration and pace. So now we get 17 players. Now what I've done is I do use this scoring system. I've just referred to it. This I've just, before hitting record, this is our squad TS Galaxy. This is all the players in the, all known players. So it was 10,000 players. This is absolutely all of them. And so if I just double click on this, advance forward on attack, you get another numbers. Just to remind us, for us, Uche was 11.8. I'm looking now at our team at TS Galaxy, and then Krot was 11.6. And then if we go into the players that are in the all known players that are interested in joining, you can see basically a load of 13s. And if I go one step further and just take out these 17 players that meet the filter, so this is forwards that are at or close to what I'm going to call the archetype, so the kinds of players that will be good enough, I think, to bring us to the top of the division in South Africa. Then we've got, here's our 17 guys, and if I again click the sorting, we get players from 13.7 downwards. And when I go back to my grid over here, not this one, but this one, what I've done is I've looked at Sundowns, who we have just beaten, but are the best team in terms of quality of squad, I think, in South Africa, and also are the current reigning champions of the African Champions League. So they're the benchmark. We're trying to win that Champions League. Their forwards are 13 and 14 rated. So these guys are sort of 13 upwards. So if I, on the screen here, perhaps you can see it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 or so forwards. These 10 guys are the kind of players we want to be recruiting. So if we can get them at the right kind of price and they look right by the eye test and we look at them and the scouts look at them, this is the players we want to recruit. And to replace those 2 players we are moving on from, Uche and Krot, I want a couple of these guys. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put all these guys in a shortlist. I'm going to send them for scouting, and then we can have a look at them. All right, it's done. Magic of television. We've got on the screen now all these guys that are shortlisted. So they're all interested in coming to play for us, be it for transfer or for loan. They all look pretty good. I mean, I've sorted it by acceleration, which I think is the most important attribute for a centre forward. And there's some really good players. I mean, this guy, 17 pace. This is the guy who was the top, and I've got the scoring system open here. So 13.7 on this guy below you. I think we can only get this guy on loan. He's quite a high valuation, but 17 acceleration, 16 pace. I mean, this player is really good. I mean, I would look at this guy at quite a high level in English football. If you take the view that the South African domestic leagues are about League One level, certainly the domestic players look like they're about League One style players, and then the foreign players are more kind of championship level. This guy is at a good solid level, and quite why he's being loaned out, don't know. This guy would be great for us. Next one down, this guy Brown also stands out on here. Just looks good. These players look good. If you compare this player to the player we're selling, who's called Krot, is the Belarusian player, and remember that speed kills a little bit in Football Manager. I think this is just this is exactly the kind of player we're looking to sign. And then the other one, Kutumela, again towards the top, transfer listed 35,000, and it's got 17 acceleration, 15 pace, 14 composure, 12 off the ball, 15 finishing. So we'll take all of that, and that's exactly the kind of player that we'd like. He's not done quite so well, but I think he'll react pretty favourably to being in our system. Let's compare him against Uche. So Uche is a good player, no doubt about it, but this guy replicates the speed of Uche. Doesn't have the vision because he's not a winger. He plays down the middle, but is a better down the middle player. And I think a big reason why that down the middle polygon looks better is composure and finishing. This guy is a guy that you would be happy with on the end of chances. Uche, good as he is, in our system isn't really the guy you want on the end of chances. So all these guys look positive and they all look good, and there are 12 of them. Now, we've only got a couple of scouts, I think. Let's have a look how many scouts we've got. We've got 2 scouts, and we don't have long until the deadline. We've got 2 scouts, and then we've got 2 coaches, two managers that are a reserve manager and an under-21 manager and a goalkeeping coach who are kind of all right at scouting too. So that's our scouting coverage. Now, what I'm minded to do, I want to get all these guys scouted, so I'll do that right away. And I think those 3 at the top are the ones I really want to look at, because I think we're going to sign quite possibly 2 of those. I think if I just do it by... I also like this. There's one guy down here that I quite like, that I spotted briefly before hitting record. Deladia, again, listed South African. All right, so I think I've just tidied up the scouting thing. I think everyone's being scouted now. What I'm going to do now is I think I'm going to say, just as we did that for strikers, I'm going to quickly flick round the other positions in this all-known players thing, and I'm just going to work and see if there's which ones that sort of jump out and fit the archetypes. I think we'll have a quick look at those, just in case there are clear standouts on recruiting for other positions, because we've got I think we should just run through the first season and then see how we get on. But before we get to the end of this window, it would make sense just to make sure we've checked for absolute obvious standouts, because maybe there are some. Right, so all these positions then. And now 12.2 is the best among the archetypes, and I'm going to go back to... Let's delete that one. So this is our squad. That's all those strikers we liked. Now this is the everywhere else we liked. So in our wing backs, we've got one who's a 12, who's our left back, who's called Ngozi, is here. And he was 11.9 when I first started doing this, and he's already at 12.1. So he's growing, developing. He's good. He's probably our best player. Let's quickly just go and have a look at Ngozi. He must have a couple of arrows upwards. There we go, some upwards arrows. There's a brilliant video by Evidence-Based Football Manager on this that shows that every month, there's one day in the month for each player. It's a different day for different players. They get reassessed for their attributes. Now, if their attributes have gone up a little bit, you can't see it on this, but they're not actually out of 12. It's 12 point something. If they go up by 0.1 or more, you get the upward arrow. And we've just seen Nkozi's gone from, on a blended basis, 16.9 to 12.1 or whatever. And you can see that flow through on the screen, because in his last month, he's gone up a bit. So there's Nkozi, and everything's going well for him. And that's just further evidence that he's the man for us. And if we come back, the Sundowns have got their guys at 11.5, 12.6. And then let's look at what we can get. 11.12, 12.6. There are a few of them knocking around. Any obvious deals? So not this guy. He's at 4,000 a week. This guy who plays for Swallows, I can see immediately is listed. Low value, good wage, would be a good wing back, even though strictly speaking it says a midfielder. But look, he's got 12.7 as well as a defence midfielder. So this guy's going to probably have high work rate and be an interesting player for us. So decent physicals and a high work rate. Yeah, okay, that's exactly the one I said I want to see players who are obvious fits for us. That is one of them, and that guy is definitely going on our long list and definitely being scouted by our fancy scout. Next guy, Abdoulaye Ibrahim Dembele, Malian, 18, perfectionist personality. That's a good player, I would imagine. Let's have a look. Trouble is expense. It looks like his value is up to 950,000. We can do the ask the agent thing. 1.1 million. Well, we're definitely not doing that. And if we make an offer of around 800,000, we're going to get back. They want 2 million. No, they want 525. That would be 275. So the way going 100 to 5725, that gets you to 600 odd. And then if you halve that, which is basically the middle between the bid and the ask, you typically get to this number, 275. So they don't want 1 million, they want 275. Acceleration pace 12.12, work rate 13. He's good, but he's not so exciting that I would want to go and spend 300,000 in the overseas player. Let's get the South Africans in place first before we go too much further. Here's a guy listed by QPR, which is interesting. And ostensibly it says he's a centre-back, but we think he's more of a wing-back with his acceleration, pace, stamina and work rate. But it's only 12 work rate. So presumably that's a loan opportunity. It is 131. You can change those mandatories to optional just by doing that. And then you put in optional. And what will happen is when you hit suggest terms, this number will go up a bit. But I don't think that we... do I want this guy? Not really. He's right-sided. We've got a guy called Gumede, who I actually quite like because he's got enormous... Let's just sort this out a bit. Tidy this up. Gumede's got enormous pace. So here we are. And if you then compare him against the player at QPR, whose name I've already forgotten. And in fact, we might not be able to do a side-by-side comparison because it's a wing-back against a... Yeah, we can't. But this guy's got 13 pace, and my man Gumede has got 18 pace, 15 acceleration, 12 stamina, 13 work rate. I think that's all right. He's only got 3 tackling, which is why eventually we'll need to sign a better right-back. But for now, I think he'll be all right. And in the matches he's played for us so far, he's just in the last match got a 7.7 and an assist. So I don't think he's going to struggle too much. So I'm not going to do that for the right back there from QPR. Next one, Sheila Nene, better work rate, South African, young. Okay, this looks like it could be an interesting option. Plays at Royal AM. Is it another team? Yeah, it's another team in our division. And this guy's got, okay, this is much more conventionally the sort of player I'm looking for, although pace 11, but he's doing well, 8 appearances. So, okay, that's quite an interesting player. Let's see. 375, 2,000 a week. No, I don't want to, not yet. I don't want to start spending money like that. I want to be much more controlled than that. So I don't see a wing back here is the sort of immediate response to all of those. What about this guy? No, I don't see. There's a loan. That's another loanee from the Championship. So there are the odd foreign player that can. Typically, what I think these players are, it's players who play. They'll be British players or English players, but they'll play for clubs in nations, either in Africa or the Caribbean or something like that, which means they're playing international football, which means they can get the work permit in South Africa. And that's what all the filtering has figured out. But no, this is a player with 10 acceleration, so no, we're not going to do that. So none of those guys jump out, so that's that. Next position, ball-playing defender. Reminder on the levels, our guys are in the 11s, mid-11s. Sundowns have got guys in the 12s. So we want guys, if we can find them in the 12s that we can afford. First one, Ndaya, we saw that when we were looking at centre-backs earlier. And Unkati was Ugandan and at Swallows. So they're probably not jumping out. I would quite like a loanee actually from in this position. And we have got this... There are a couple of, just because it doesn't feel like we've got much depth in that position at all. So if we take, for example, this guy Mofokeng, who is the highest here, and he is 11.5, 6 foot, right-footed, and could just be useful. Actually, I think he would probably find his way onto the field for us. £800 a week, and then we can probably have another go at signing a centre-back in the summer when everybody's out of contract. So I think that's a player that we've already scouted him and he looks all right. So I think that would probably that's a good idea. All right, and then defence midfielder. We've got this clear standout. that we've already identified Unkobo. And look, there's Nene again. So, okay, we're going to have to get Nene looked at closely, because it looks like Nene might be a guy that we should be paying close attention to. So let's get Nene looked at. And then that's the guy at Kaiser Chief on 4,000 a week. There's Ndai again, who just keeps coming up. I think we've already scouted Ndai. But I don't think... No, we haven't. I think let's go and let's make sure he's been looked at as well. And then this guy, Koza, too expensive really for us, but can play 2 positions for us, and is young and is presumably available on loan. He's already on loan to somebody. Let's just check. We can't sign him. No, we can't. So that's not going to work. And then we're back to the Arlene guy again. Okay, so there's not enormous amounts there, but we want to definitely go after this guy, Unkobo. So that's a quick sweep round of all the positions. Okay, so all right, these 4 need to get scouted as well. All right, so Nkobo, which is the midfielder, defence midfielder that we identified has come in. Remember, the benchmark is our right-sided midfielder, Ungubane, and Nkobo is a clear upgrade. He's now come in. It says 3.5 stars. I mean, the star ratings are kind of interesting up to a point, but I think this player is a clear upgrade on what we've already got, and a player that should be pretty good for this level. I think, judging by what we've done so far to figure out what this level looks like. The difference between Nkobo and Ngubane is just a better defence midfielder. He's got a higher work rate. He's got a better passing. He's much better at tackling. So he'll run around a lot more, and he'll influence the game a lot more, would be my guess. When he gets the ball, he makes better decisions. He's got good composure. This bloke looks good, I'd say. So is if you go just back to the scores on the scoring system, and Kobo 12.7, and if you look at, we had 11.3 on the previous holder of the job, so that's a clear upgrade. And if you look at the Sundowns guys, then 12.7 probably gets in the team for Sundowns as well. So I mean, we've got here a player that I think is going to be pretty good for us. And so I think that the move on in Kobo, there's not much point in waiting around to see the rest of the scouting reports. They're not all in yet, but this guy is a definite yes. So we might as well bring him in. And I don't want those other 2 transfers to disappear. It's obviously the case that we're going to find players that we like more than those guys. And if we've got a fixture, and we do have a fixture today, we are not going to want to play those guys for fear that these deals will go away, because it's fairly obvious we can recruit players who are better. So I think I'm just going to bring forward the 2. These, when you've got a guy on delay, if you go there, you can bring it through and you can do the deals. So we've signed Nkobo. We're going to sell Uche today, and we're going to sell Krot today. So that then puts us in a position where we've got... just move that back in. So Uche and Krot have gone. And then we've got our new player, Nkobo, and he was 12.7. And I'm going to leave, even though he's the starter, I'm going to leave this guy Ngubane on here, because it's just a reminder to me that these are the expensive contracts that we need to do something about. And in fact, I'm going to try and make an attempt to sell Ngubane, I think, now while we're thinking about it, just to make sure that we've made the attempt. So if I then just go by wage, those 2 will now go. So we've just released 7,000 a week of wages, which is pretty good. And Ngubane, who's at the top of here, let's see if we can... I've already been going around doing this before I hit record, but let's just sort of see if we can find some... My client may not react well. It's good to see that coming up, because what that basically means is the level of the clubs is sort of starting to change. When you get players come and ask you for new contracts and stuff, a lot of what that's about is when you've signed better players and they kind of, their place in the pecking order has changed. Okay, we'll just get through a couple of fixtures and the scouts, and I'll come back when we're closer to the end of the window. We've got the scouts all sorted. Right, back again. 3 things to show you. First thing is when Nkobo made his debut, which is the defence midfielder we've just signed, we got this page where it's a keen sense of intrigue around the clubs. They got to see their new man in action for the first time. And in my experience, when that happens, it's because you've signed a player that is a bit better than the players you've already got, which is not surprising because I think Nkuba clearly is a bit better than the players you've already got. So that's a tick. That's good. We've had 2 more matches. We played Tux FC away and Kaiser Chiefs at home and had 2 draws, which is a bit more like it. I wasn't expecting to just be spanking opposition teams 6-0 every week or whatever we were doing at the beginning of these videos I was making. But we're still solidly in mid-table. We'll make our way up a bit from here, particularly if we sign the couple of forwards I want to sign. We haven't got Uche anymore, who was good. And so for the time being, we're kind of waiting for the gap to be filled by other players. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is the scouts are now in for the forward line. So these are now all scouts reports. They think that the best one for star rating is this guy, Arab, who we've got on trial. Potential, they like this guy, Salitas FC, which I think is in Burkina Faso. And this guy is good, but is not jumping off the page at me. Acceleration 14, pace 16 is good for a 19-year-old. Fine, but balanced. We don't really need players that are excitingly going to develop. We want players to play for us right now. This isn't really about development. We can just sign players that are going to be playing right now in our next match. So we come back to this and we can just use the scouts as a cross-check. And this below ye, 13.7 is probably the first one to jump on. So if I sort this by acceleration, below ye would jump to the top. And the scouts are telling us that below ye is available for free because his contract's about to run out. And this is just a complete result. I think what we'll do is try and sign him. Okay, wants to keep his options open. So that means he's a bit too good for us, which he is. So straight onto the long list, and that's a player we'll just keep trying to sign as a player on a freebie for next season. That would be an outstanding signing. Next one, Washington Brown. So let's look at Washington Brown. What does he want for wages wise? 2,000. Yeah, okay. Yeah, he's pretty good. Bookmark him for the time being. Next one, Kutumela. Kutumela's only 2.5 on this, so the scouts are much less convinced. 1,000 on this. Just compare him with Brown, who just looked at. You can see that Brown's more complete, and you can see why the scouts think Brown is more attractive. It possibly is, and Kutumela's got a lot of negatives here: injury prone, big matches, and so on. So he's a bit cheaper, but that's because he's much less good. Whereas Brown, 24, right-footed, that could be an interesting one. So let's just keep him in mind. Arab we've looked at. So Arab's the one that's on trial and isn't South African, is Moroccan and Spanish second nationality, and wants more money than we're going to probably want to spend on a player at this stage in the save. Let's just have a look. Because a trialist, what will happen is we'll say wants match earner and all this stuff. We're not going to do that. Let's say we'll offer 2,000, and then it's all going to. Because a trialist, we can walk away and then we can release him, and then we can try to sign him again. So we'll do that. So we'll try to come back and try to sign him again in a minute. Next one, Makwanasi, transfer listed. Again, 2.5. So the game thinks of this guy as a step lower, and he has got the 2 jumping reach. 800 a week. That might be a sort of inexpensive backup sort of signing because it's a good player. He's small number of minutes in the league. He's been all right, and I'm pretty sure he's quite good. But he's just very, very inexpensive, and he's signed for Sundowns at 150,000. So that's a player I quite like. Maybe let's see if we can. Yeah, okay. The game thinks of him as not really good enough for us. I think that's another player that we might pick up in the summer when we need a player. And then Smith is left-footed, and we need a left-footer because we've lost one in Uche, and so I think we've got. Beloyi can play there. Can Beloyi come to us on loan? Did we look at that? Oh, right. So let's sign Beloyi on loan. That's, I think, a no-brainer, particularly with him having a contract that's going to expire. There's a slim chance they won't renew the contract. So let's get Beloyi on loan. Let's do that. Smith. Let's look at Smith compared to Beloyi. He'll be not as good, but where is Beloyi? Particularly around pace, quite good in the air in the game. I think he's quite as good, which is not surprising. Inconsistent, whatever. Smith's probably only okay, but is okay. What with the 200 a week? Again, another player that we might just look to sign. It's very inexpensively. Keep his options open. That's because these players are good. So these things coming up with things like keep good options open and the rest of it, they're all a good sign, not a bad sign. Now down here towards the bottom, this guy Bongani, I like the look of a lot. He is 13.0, but just looked, when we looked to begin with, sort of a bit more well-rounded maybe than some of the others here. And here, look, the game agrees. He's got a higher potential rest of it. Just looking at that line across there, it's not as good as Arab's line. It's not as good as Beloyi's line. It's not as good, actually, as even Smith's line. But Brown and Bongani, I think, are the ones that jump out to me when I do this. And I'll just look at them for a minute against each other. So Brown, where's Bongani there? I mean, that sort of heart shape is what I always like the look of. And this is a couple of players that really, I mean, I think both these guys are good. This guy's got 16 composure, which, let's have a look at their footedness. This guy's got a reasonable left foot, not perfect, but he could play on the left for us. I mean, Brown, this guy, and then the guy we're bringing on loan. Plus, we have got a couple of decent guys already. We've got Maleka and Ngidi. So we just do Brown, for example, against Maleka, who's the best guy we've got at the moment. And, Brown's just a better version of what we got. And those guys are pretty good as well. So, bringing in these guys would be progress, I think. So let's have a look at what they want from Bongani. 2,000 a week. Okay. We'd do that. So that's. I'm not going to wait until the summer for this guy. I'm just going to bid them what they ask for. And then on Brown, let's see if we can get a sensible price. I think this guy is pretty good. And I think if we can pay not too much, I think we should probably progress and do that. So let's have a look. 41, just remember that number there. And then, they want 41. That makes it nice and easy. And then, so that's 3 we've just bid for. We've bid for Brown, Bongani and Beloyi. And if we get all 3 of those, I think you'd be pretty happy with that. And then we've got the defender we might bring in on loan. We brought in the other guy, and I think, is that it? I think we looked at, we did look at this guy, Nene, didn't we? It's the only other one that we haven't progressed. And let's have a look at what they want for Nene just to see. So 35 plus 210. Okay, 110. 110, 145. So they want about 130. Let's bid that 125. Okay, we'll see what contract asks come back to us. Beloyi says extremely keen on the move. That's always good. This guy, this is Bongani. Let's see if we can do. Yeah, and then I'd like to sign a longer term contract on this guy because I think he's good. And okay, and then here, Brown. So let's try him. Again, I think this is a good player. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. I'm a little bit reticent on doing a long-term deal. 3,000 is a lot for us. I think we might. Let's not do the longer-term deal. let's just do the reset thing. You don't get the fee percentage. You don't get that. And then we'll just take him towards the bottom of his range. Let's say 2.2. And then 2.5. I suspect we're going to have to pay 3. Oh no, there we are. That's good. Do that. And then this is Nene slightly interested. This means I think that we're going to have to pay more than we want to. And if this turns out to be a lot, then I'm not really interested. And let's just, I think this will fail, but let's just push it really low. He's on 1,000 a week. So we don't really want to pay. I think this is a player we're kind of signing for signing's sake. I'm not going to pay that. And yeah, all right, so let's see if those go through. We're quite near the deadline, so it won't take long. There you go. There's Beloyi. There's Mongani. And there's Brown. Right, okay, so that's fantastic. So we've clearly upgraded, I think, our forward line. Clear upgrade to our forward line. And now we've got a forward line that's much closer to that, the Sundowns team that we're competing with. So we've ended up bringing in we've signed 4 players there at and around the deadline. We're going to sign a 5th because there's a reserve defender that I think is worth bringing in. We've got this guy, Unkobo, and this is Mofokeng. This is the reserve defender that's worth bringing in. So we'll do that as well. Anyway, that's that for this video, I think. I'm going to make a couple more on this TS Galaxy on our way through as we build our way through to try and compete for the African Champions League. And so if you'd like to watch those, of course, do subscribe. And thank you for watching. See you in the next one.